Welcome to the Journey Podcast, where we share some of the most inspiring stories on the planet, life lessons, and tools that will help you navigate through your own personal journey. On this episode, you will find a segment from our weekly life coaching platform, the DreamNation Breakfast Club. Feel free to tune in live on Zoom every Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern via dnbreakfastclub.com. I am your host, Josh Valentine. Welcome to the DreamNation Breakfast Club. I am your host, Josh Valentine, and I'm really excited to cover today's topic, which is a season of separation, or we're in the season of separation as we're going into the new year. And I'm really excited to cover a lot of things regarding relationships and communication and so much more. So today's going to be a value-packed session. If you're new to the Breakfast Club, welcome. Not sure how you were welcomed into our community, but just know that every single Tuesday morning, you can catch up with us here, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And here on the Breakfast Club, we pretty much cover everything regarding personal development, helping you navigate through life with different personal development tools and strategies that can really help you with whatever it is that you have going on in your life. So every week is a little bit something different. You could always look forward to tuning in to something a little bit different, but overall, it's all centered around helping to improve your life from a holistic standpoint. So it may be your faith, fitness, family, fortune, fun, the 5 Fs, as we oftentimes call it here. But nonetheless, I am really excited to be here with you all. Then today's message is going to be appropriate because it's going to be covering essentially going through a season of separation. So there are a lot of things as you transition into the new year that you really have to do some self inventory on. And you have to start analyzing everything from your relationships to the environments that you're in to certain things that are distractions and things that you may just have to cut off altogether going into the new year. Because sometimes when it comes to just getting things done, it's not a matter of the how-tos. It's just more so eliminating certain things that don't serve you, eliminating things that occupy your mind, many of which occupy your mind rent-free. So this is always, I always say it's the time to go through your eviction process, to go through this season of separation, raise the rent. Maybe some people have to be evicted from your life altogether. Hopefully that's not the case. But if it is, it's important just to analyze these relationships and really determine whether or not they're going to be just best for you going into the new year. So with that being said, today's topic is going to be on the season of separation. So a lot of interesting things to cover here this morning. And I'm also going to share my YouTube channel link for you guys. For those of you who want to tune in to if you want to tune into the podcast as well as Breakfast Club snippets, I oftentimes have them posted on there. Shout out to my wife, Kia, who's been a tremendous blessing when it comes to just sharing all of this stuff. She's been behind the scenes, really helping to grow the YouTube channel and so many other things. So I know she works tirelessly doing this. So I'm going to post up the YouTube channel. You guys should be able to subscribe on there as well. Definitely would be greatly appreciated if you do so. So share for you guys. The very first one is, so many times relationships break up without people even knowing what went wrong. That ever happened to anyone? Of course. It's most certainly, it's happened to me before. I'm sure many of you can relate. But the most important way to ensure success in any relationship is to communicate clearly upfront. Make sure your rules are known and met. Develop pattern interrupts with your partner to prevent the kinds of arguments where you can't even remember what the disagreement is about anymore, only that you've got to win. Use transformational vocabulary to keep upsets from being blown out of proportion. For example, instead of saying, "I can't stand it when you do that," say, "I'd prefer it if you did this instead." So transformational language, that's an interesting way to refer to it. But yes, how many of you have been in those arguments or just have been frustrated with someone and maybe you've been going back and forth with your partner and you just realize that you don't even know where the argument even started. And I think a lot of us can relate to this. So I think just overall, coming from a place of compassion and kindness and empathy, and it's easier said than done. I mean, let's not BS ourselves here. Like, we all go through it from time to time where, sometimes it's just very difficult to be the bigger person and to muster up the courage to just to exude that compassion and whatever it is that you're dealing with your partner. So really good to understand. One of the things that I do my best to do is set my intention going into those hard conversations, if you will. I know many of you who are in committed relationships, you know exactly what it's like to have those hard conversations. And sometimes, depending on what it is, you can get triggered. So it may be hard conversations around money, it may be hard conversations around your parenting style, or hard conversations about just making lifestyle changes. And they're not always um, they're not always just as simple as, you know, being kind or being compassionate. Sometimes there's a lot of layers behind this, but so important to just always be mindful and set your intention of how you want to show up for those conversations. Next up, we have, is your love relationship one of the highest priorities in your life? If not, it will take a backseat to all the other more urgent things that happen every day, and your passion will gradually dissipate. Don't allow familiarity to habituate you to the intense excitement and gratitude you feel for having someone special in your life. And this is so, so important, you guys, because how many times have you been taken for granted, like throughout the course of your life? Many of you have been in a relationship. You know how it feels to be taken for granted by someone and not feel appreciated or respected or just important enough for that person to essentially treat you like their person, right? I can most certainly relate on both sides. Like, I've been that person that has neglected, my personal relationship, just getting so consumed with life. Sometimes life is life, and you've got a lot of things. Maybe you're in survival mode and you've got bills to pay, you've got work obligations, you've got obligations with your children, and the last thing you're thinking about is your partner. But one of the things that I had an epiphany about once was just bringing more consciousness to the relationship. The thing about it is, with your most intimate relationships, typically when your relationships at home are doing better and they're thriving, right? Your inner world is going to be a direct reflection of your outer world and vice versa. So whenever things are right at home or with your inner relationships, things just tend to be a lot better in your life. And relationships add so much value. They're one of the most profound aspects of the human experience. So it's important to bring that consciousness to the relationship, to nurture it, and to really not only invest monetarily in that relationship, but invest your time, invest your energy, your attention, give it the consciousness that it ultimately deserves, because it can be one of the most rewarding aspects of your entire life if you do give it that consciousness. Okay, so moving forward, we have the next share, which is on apologizing. So let's see here. Apologize. And this is from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People weekly flashcards. And basically, what it says is, on the topic of apologizing, apologize to someone you've wronged. Find out what you can do to repair the harm. So it's interesting because today we're going to be talking about essentially going through a season of separation. And this is not a Breakfast Club session about divorce, right? That's not what we're talking about here. Maybe for some of you, it may be that, but for the most part, when it comes to separation, you have to remember that a lot of your relationships, you're essentially attracting people who are like you. You're attracting your energy and your vibe. Your vibe attracts your tribe. So whenever you're analyzing your relationships, it's also important to analyze just yourself as a friend, as a brother, as a sister, as a mother, as a wife, as a husband. it's so important to just really, really ask yourself, am I the person that ultimately needs to be loved at a distance? Am I the person else needs to have limited association with because of my personality? Or maybe it's just the way you communicate. Maybe you're the toxic person in the relationship. Oftentimes, especially in the world of personal development, we have a tendency to sort of point the finger at everyone. Maybe it's because you feel that you're the one investing the time in the personal development and you're not the one who needs to change. Maybe you feel like everybody else needs to change. But the reality is, you also have some aspects of your nature that have to be changed. And maybe the issue isn't other people, maybe the issue is you. And I remember a mentor of mine would always say, be careful at who and what you point a finger at, because every time you point a finger at someone or something, you have three others pointing right back at you. So it's essential to analyze yourself, your character, right? Your communication style. Maybe the value that you're adding to other people's lives. Are you a giver? Are you a taker? Are you an opportunist? Are you someone who's in the relationship and genuinely cares? Remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So are you someone who actually exudes compassion and empathy? Are you humble? Are you arrogant? These are all different questions that you have to ask yourself, because again, sometimes it's not the other people. Sometimes it's you taking a look in the mirror and really analyzing yourself and perhaps making those changes within. And as a result of making those changes within, the changes outside essentially start to happen, the changes that you're ultimately looking for. Remember, if you want certain types of relationships in your life, maybe you feel like people aren't really down for you. Maybe you feel like people aren't necessarily loyal to you. Well, ask yourself, are you that loyal friend? Are you that good friend that checks in? Are you that good friend that goes all out in your relationships, or in even in your most intimate relationships with your person, with your partner, your significant other, right? Are you exuding all of the characteristics that you want from them, right? It's so easy to point the finger and blame everybody else, and it's a lot more difficult to face you and all that you come with. It's always difficult. It's also difficult to process certain emotions sometimes. Many times we subconsciously sabotage ourselves. We go through a series of self-sabotage because we don't want to deal with those big emotions, right? Maybe the emotions of facing yourself and having to deal with with yourself and how you've been going about your communication. Maybe you're someone that's always yelling at, your children, or yelling at your spouse, and you get easily flustered and you get impatient. I know for me, over the years, I've had to really look at myself in the mirror and come face to face with my impatience, for example. And I've had to work on my patience over the years, because on one side of the spectrum, impatience has been very beneficial when it comes to just getting things done and being productive. But impatience doesn't work very well with relationships. And you have to set proper boundaries for yourself when it comes to certain aspects of your nature, because there are certain things that are very useful when it comes to the workplace. There are some things that are very useful when it comes to building teams and building businesses and building wealth, but they're not so great when it comes to your most intimate relationships. It's interesting because I started watching this series the other day. Every now and then I'll make the time to just kind of unwind and catch up on some new series like on Netflix or something. So the other day I was watching this, I think it won an Emmy award or some kind of award, and it was this Netflix series called Beef. And really interesting, spicy suspense thriller kind of deal. And it's all about like revenge, right? Amongst some people, it's revenge, and a lot of this I probably made it through like two episodes, and I was just watching, this, and the just the dynamics of relationships. And sometimes we get caught up in even just wanting revenge on people. right? And we get caught up in, just wanting to retaliate on something, and who it ultimately ends up hurting is you, right? And it's very difficult to process, guilt and shame and all of these different things. And maybe you have some resentment, and you have to heal your heart in order to truly thrive in your relationships. So as we do some inventory of just going through this season of separation, I just really want to encourage many of you to really ask yourself, are you the person that needs to be separated from? And what do you have to change about you? Because your personality will determine your personal reality. And maybe there's certain aspects of your personality that may be overbearing, right? And it's interesting in the Netflix series Beef, this guy, and I'm not gonna spoil it for you or anything, but just to give you a little bit without giving you everything. He was just kind of going on a downward spiral and attracting a lot of these negative circumstances. And one of the things that I realized throughout the course of my life is sometimes what ends up happening is you're just on a really lower vibrational frequency, and you're in a space where you're just focused on a lot of negative things. You're focusing on the lack, on the scarcity, on what's not working in your life, and it ends up spilling into a lot of your relationships. And you go through this series of self-sabotage, and you're on this downward spiral, and it takes work to get off that downward spiral. And it's so essential to just take that time to really do some introspection, to really reflect on, in 2023, what could I have changed about me? What could I have changed about the way that I communicated? What could I have changed about my relationships? What could I have changed about even my forgiveness? Have I forgiven, or have I been the person that's just been wanting to retaliate because you've been deeply hurt? I was talking to one of my leaders, and they were telling me how they went into a therapy session recently. And the therapist was telling them how a lot of anger is ultimately a mask for sadness. And oftentimes, when people are really angry, many times there's just an underlying sadness there. And they exude this anger and this frustration and this rage to protect themselves. And how many things in your life that you're just angry about, but when you really peel off those layers and you do that analysis of yourself, right? You end up coming across just deep sadness. And on the topic of, and just even as I was mentioning earlier about this Netflix series on Beef, it was interesting because one of the characters, he was a husband, and he was super big into personal development. And there were aspects of him that kind of reminded me of myself, because sometimes I do get caught up in giving unsolicited advice. And my wife was actually joking on me the other day about like my tendency to give unsolicited advice. The coach within me always wants to help people. And sometimes I've got to be very careful at just helping people, because again, even though it may be good advice, some people, they just want a human being. They just want an ear to listen. And again, what may work very well in the business world, me leading teams, that may very well help, but in relationships, it just doesn't. And part of the thriving that comes from relationships is knowing when to put on certain hats and when to take them off. So who you are in the business world may not necessarily work so well in your personal relationship. And you have to know when to make those proper transitions from the roles that you play. And sometimes we're so consumed and we identify so strongly with our work that also spills into our relationships. And that's the reason why they suffer, because your friend just wants a friend. Your friend doesn't want a life coach or a therapist all the time. Your friend just wants an ear to listen. Your friend just wants someone who can empathize with them, right? Maybe a shoulder to cry on. And it's not always the most appropriate time to just share advice or give that unsolicited advice. So I think we have a share coming in. And let's just see. I think we had some hands coming up. Maybe they came up and went down. So if you guys put up your hand, you may want to raise it back up. And let's just see here. I just want to make sure. I think we have Mimi. Awesome. So, Mimi, you have the floor. Let us know where in the world you are tuning in from.
My God, wait. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Okay.
clear.
Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, Josh, I love your podcast. So congratulations
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you.
And thank you. Well, since we're in the subject of separation, eh, all I want to say is that, well, I have had more breakups than I care to admit. But I'm not saying here by any means that if you're in a relationship, for just anything, let go. But if you're in a relationship, whether it's with a friend, with a partner, a loving partner, or whatever, and for whatever the reason or the reasons, the relationship ends, hey, many times the best thing is just let go and let God. As cliche as it may sound, but through my experiences has been that none of those breakups that at a moment hurt so much and everything. Well, in the end, as time has gone by and I have healed, uh, I come to the conclusion that those people were the best thing that never happened to me. This I heard it here in the Breakfast Club, and it was it was awesome. So, yeah, and everything, put God, always God, to guide you. And if eventually something has to end, well, let go and let God. That's my share for today.
Love it. Really, really great share there, Mimi. And I most certainly agree with that statement. And for so many different reasons, I think that relationships, especially breakups are very difficult. They're super, super difficult to go through. And sometimes we just feel like our lives are like over, right? Or maybe your identity was so wrapped up in your relationship and all of your friends. You shared so many friends, and you were really cool with their sister or something like that, right? And it's just weird and it's awkward. But sometimes, I mean, not even sometimes, everybody that I've spoken to, like for the most part, many of them, they would agree that that was the best thing that happened to them, just the fact that they separated from that specific person. And I just feel that sometimes with relationships, they are meant for a season. They are meant to perhaps help you grow in a certain area, maybe to teach you something. When you reflect on the blessing and the treasure in that trash and the inspiring message in that mess, you really have a different perspective, and it helps you with that healing process, because let's be real, sometimes it ends really, really bad. And I've seen many cases though where those relationships come to an end, and maybe it's not even an intimate relationship, maybe it's just a friendship. And when it comes to relationships overall, I believe that relationships are a lot like a tree, and you have some people in your life that are going to be like leaves of a tree, meaning that they are just going to be there for a season. Many leaves, if you noticed, they just fall off depending on the time of the year. And anytime there's some strong wind, the leaves just can do like their name states. They leave, and they can't really stand the changing seasons. They don't stick around forever, right? And then you have the branches. And the branches are a little bit stronger, right? Like typically it takes a big, big storm to break off those branches. And there'll be people in your life that are more like branches, and they'll stick around for many years. But then when things get really, really tough, they'll just break, and they'll carry on. But then you have those really, really good friends, those people in your life that are just ride or die. And in Spanish culture, right, for us brothers, we oftentimes would refer to those guys in our lives like as our compadre, our compay, right? That's our ride or die. Like that's the person you make your godfather. And For the woman, it's the same, my comadre. Like that's your ride or die. That's your that's your general. If you got an army, like that is your top general. You know that they're gonna have your back. They're what I refer to as those shovel friends. And whenever I give the analogy of shovel friends, it can go either way because it's a little dark. But typically, those shovel friends are the people in your life that if it was like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning and uh, you probably did something crazy, right? Who would be the friend in your life? Like if you had to call for some, let's just say, just for some duct tape and a shovel, and we're not going to say what it's for, but they would legit not even ask what it's for. And they just may help you bury what you need to bury. It could be a 45-minute drive, it can be a 2-hour drive. But if you call them and you need that shovel and that duct tape, like they're going to come with no questions asked. And there are people in your life that are going to be like that. They're like the roots of a tree. They're there through thick and thin. They're there through just the most difficult circumstances. And they're not going to be the person that's constantly just judging you. And you can go to them about your deepest darkest stuff, and those friendships are so valuable. And don't count on those friendships all the time for the business relationship. Sometimes it's best to keep certain relationships separate from business. Business isn't always something that's necessarily going to bring you closer as friends. Maybe you just need a friend that you can just genuinely trust, a friend that you know is going to have your back, a friend that's always going to be an ear to listen. And the thing about it is, you also need to reciprocate that type of friendship. You have to be a shovel friend if you want shovel friends in your life. You have to be the root of a tree for other people if you expect that in return. So when it comes to the relationships in your life, especially as it pertains to your friendships, really ask yourself, out of all of your friends, which one are leaves, which ones are branches, which ones are roots? And perhaps you need to nurture the roots a little bit more, right? Maybe the roots you have to give a little bit more time, a little bit more energy, a little bit more attention. Give your T to, as we oftentimes describe it. T being an acronym for your time, energy, and attention. Some of your relationships need more of your T, and some need less. Some relationships you need to legit love them at a distance. You need limited association. And it's also important to really determine whether or not some of these relationships are even conducive for your overall mental health, because some people just really get caught up in gossiping. Some people get caught up in gossiping. Some people get caught up in only talking about negative things, right? And there's a saying that you're either going to change your friends or you're going to change your friends. And sometimes you end up outgrowing those friendships, and that's okay as well. Friendships are not meant to just keep you small, keep you from growing, keep you stagnant. Friendships should be a mutual exchange of value where you're both uplifting one another. You're both helping support one another to grow, because life is just to truly soak up life for all the fulfillment that it has to offer and all of the joy it has to offer. You always have to be in a state of growth. And if you're not in a state of growth, you're in a state of decay. So when you're analyzing your relationships, ask yourself, how many of these relationships are actually contributing to my growth? Relationships are not like, you shouldn't be on the same kind of conversations that you were on in high school, now in your 30s or 40s or 50s. They should be about the next level. They should be about encouraging one another, about improving each other's lives. Because part of really taking your relationships to the next level is you individually growing, you enhancing yourself and growing yourself, you working on your communication, you working on yourself, your quality of life. So that's what it's about. So to wrap up the topic of apology, ask yourself, who needs an apology from me? Saying you are sorry when you made a mistake or hurt someone can quickly restore an overdrawn emotional bank account. It takes courage. How many of you have an overdrawn emotional bank account? Like, You've just been, your cup has been full for a while. Maybe your cup, like legit, you've got a cup and your water has been like just hovering over. You could actually see the water. If you look at it like this, you can see that water just hovering over there. And at any point in time, it's going to start spilling onto other people. You've got to heal from certain things, because as we oftentimes hear in the world of trauma, if you don't heal from those who cut you, you'll bleed on those who don't. So there are a lot of relationships that you're either going to have to extend some forgiveness, or you have to be the one to apologize in order to close that chapter and heal those relationships and ultimately heal yourself. So to rebuild broken relationships, we must first study our own hearts to discover our own responsibilities, our own faults. And it's essential to really look at some relationships and ask yourself which ones genuinely deserve an apology. And I know one of the things that have helped me tremendously, I'm not sure how many of you here within our Breakfast Club community struggle with apologizing, but apology, it will help you with so many things in your life. I used to have issues with apology. Like I struggled with apologizing for a long period of time in my life, because when I was younger, in my younger days, I'm not sure how many of you can relate, but you just always feel like you're right? You've got this inflated ego, and as you all probably have heard, as cliche as it sounds, ego can be an acronym for edging God out, right? It's not from the divine. And when you're angry, sometimes very difficult to apologize. Sometimes it's very difficult to look at yourself and where you possibly went wrong. It's always a two-way street. That's the thing. In any argument, if you really peel a lot of those layers, I would say the vast majority of the time, you most certainly have contributed to it, even if it's just your tonality. Sometimes you escalate it because you start getting all riled up because you're emotional about it, and your communication style is what led to that issue getting even more, just outgrown. It grew a lot more and intensified itself a lot more because of the way you were communicating about it. So again, when it comes to just healing those broken relationships, a lot of it is going to be you just genuinely apologize and being really genuine about it. Not just apologizing because you heard about this in personal development and how it works. No, being real, because people can see through that. If you go and apologize just for the sake of apologizing, just to save face, people are going to see through that. You don't want to be the person that's out there just, apologizing and being fake about it. It's not going to work very well. So take some time to really reflect on, where did I go wrong? And oftentimes what I find is, especially as it pertains to your significant other, if you do take the time to apologize, many times they were just waiting to have permission to apologize as well. The people who are closest to you, like, they also want to apologize. It's just they're struggling with being the bigger person. So it does help to be that bigger person. And many times you'll get an apology back, because we all know, like, we're part to blame in the overall issue that we may be going through. So moving forward, right? We have someone that asks, when the person refuses to accept a call or any contact, what do you do? Praying and writing, although you'd love to do an eye to eye. Absolutely. Sometimes people just will cut you off because it's so painful. And what do you do if you're reaching out and the person doesn't want to just hear from you? I know years ago, I had said something to one of my sisters, and it was probably one of the regrets that I had, because I could have handled it very different. But I was talking to one of my sisters about another one of my sisters, and I remember I said some things that really hurt her, right? Because I'm the big brother, and for those of you who don't know, I've got many young sisters. I'm the big brother of many young sisters, And I love my sisters to death. Like I love, 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 like those are my girls. And they a lot of I would think all of them like look up to me to a certain degree, like as their big brother. I've always been the protector. I've always been the big brother that's like, you can't say nothing to my sister. You can't even look at my sister. Right. And I most certainly have got into a lot of beef over the years growing up in the hood, like over my sisters. So I was just that overly protective brother and still am to a certain degree, right? And as I, got older, like there's certain things that, I want for my sisters. I always want them to do better and have more and be more and all of these different things. And I remember I had said some things about my sister and my other sister basically told her, and it created like she immediately like blocked me and I apologized. I tried calling, couldn't get through. And then I sent a long text. And because she had blocked me, it turns out that she never got my apology. She never got why I said what it was that I said. And eventually I just ended up going to pay her a visit, and we just talked it out. And it was crazy because I heard that she never got the apology. And I literally apologized within that first hour. As soon as I found out, like I immediately apologized, but she didn't get it. And we went an entire year without talking. And it wasn't me not wanting to talk to her. She didn't want to talk to me, and that was fair. And just remember when it comes to certain relationships, you can't really judge people for how they heal. You can't judge people for how they process pain. You can't judge people for how they just deal with certain situations. Everybody has different traumas, different things that they're overcoming, different aspects of their journey that ultimately lead them to handling things the way that they do. But what I will say is all you can do is all you can do. And all you can do is enough. You can, try to apologize, send an email. Like if I knew any better, I probably would have sent her that same message in a lot of different ways just to make sure that she got it. Maybe I could have even written a letter just to make sure that she got it because she went an entire year without hearing an apology. So if you have someone in your life that you genuinely need to apologize to, and maybe they cut you off, you can try sending the messages. But at the end of the day, it's like all you can do is all you can do. Like you should just focus on what you can control. And if something is outside of your control, you have to bless and release it. You have to just let it go. Okay. So moving forward on the season of separation. Now, many of you who are probably wondering, well, Josh, why are you going over this right now? The reason why I'm going over a season of separation is for the simple fact that in at the end of the year, for me, it's always a good time to really analyze just where I'm at with everything. I'm not sure how many of you can relate to this, but just analyzing my relationships, analyzing the environments that I'm in, analyzing just what has been a distraction, what no longer serves me, things that are not the highest use of my time, right? And the three things that I mainly wanted to talk about here today when it comes to just separating yourself from stuff, the three things to separate yourself from are number one, people. So you have to analyze, right? What people in your life, who is it that you have to separate yourself from? And when I say separate yourself from some people, it may not be a permanent separation. It may be what I refer to as limited association with certain people, because there are certain people in your life, for example, you don't want to just cut your family members off for life and just never like ghost them for the rest of your life. Maybe they might deserve that right now, who knows? But for the most part, there are a lot of people in your life that you don't want to just cut them off completely. You want to have a heart, you want to have some compassion, but they're causing you a lot of just negative vibes because of the types of things that they talk about. And you probably just have to have limited association. Maybe it's coworkers, and perhaps that relationship just ends at work and you do not care to have any relationship outside of the workplace with that person. And that's okay. Maybe you tried it and you're not really feeling their vibe, and you have to have limited association. You have to set proper boundaries for that relationship. And then there are those people that you just genuinely need to love at a distance. How many people in your life, like you've got to love them at a distance because they've always got drama going on in their lives. And this is not to be cold. This is not to be, that person that is not willing to help their friends through tough times. But listen, how many people in your life that let's be real, y'all, like always got some drama, always have some issues. There's always something. Like they're the Debbie Downers, the Johnny Rain Clouds types of people. And you can very well get sucked into all of their drama, sucked into their toxic tendencies, sucked into all of the negativity that they have going on. One of the things that I've been so adamant about is my lifetime is just protecting my peace. Protecting my peace. I love my family. I love many of my friends, and I am that shovel friend. Like I believe wholeheartedly that the people that I rock with, they know that they can count on me when it's all said and done. They may not be able to count on me to go to all the baby showers and all the anniversary celebrations and all the birthday parties. I'm not that friend, but I am that friend that will walk to the end of earth to really help my friends who are in need. And over the years, like I've had certain friendships, certain relationships that I had to just love at a distance because it just wasn't conducive to my overall mental health. It wasn't conducive to me wanting to live in a positive space. You have to protect your peace by all costs, right? And your vibe is going to attract your tribe. And as you start to elevate in your life and you start to vibrate higher, if you will, you start to really elevate yourself, you're just going to be drawn to different types of people. And sometimes you have friends that you probably used to dance in the dark a little bit with back in the day. So many of you know exactly those friends that I'm talking about. Like I've got friends of mine, I was a wild boy in college, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. My friends and I, we were wild. Like we'd hit up the nightclub scene in New York City, and I went to college in New York City. So every single weekend we'd be out, in the clubs and just, partying and just going crazy and all kinds of craziness. But as I started to move on and elevate with my life and get grounded and become a family man, I had to love my friends at a distance because I could no longer engage in a lot of those things. And many of them, as they started to evolve with different aspects of their life and they started to progress, many of them started to release a lot of those things that no longer serve them. And many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like these days, I'm not sure how many of you can relate, but being a family person, sometimes you turn into a homebody. Like I love being home. I don't want like it's almost a burden for me when people invite me out because I just genuinely don't care to go out. I love being home. And the issue with that is sometimes you have friends that want to go out, they want to party, they want to like do things. And again, that relationship that may have to be limited association because you're not on that kind of time. You're not in that season of your life where you care to engage in those things, but it's not to cut them off. It's not to villainize them for that behavior. It's none of that. It's just more so like this isn't what's best for you in this season of your life. And therefore you're going to set some boundaries. You're going to choose what to engage in and what not to. And perhaps, right? Like you won't engage in the nightclub because now you're married. But you know what? If they're having a bowling night, as boring as it may sound for some of you, like that's what you choose to engage in. And you just have to know what's right for you and what's not. The second thing you're going to have to separate yourself from is certain environments. What do I mean by that? There are certain environments in your life that you probably frequent that just aren't necessarily the best environments. And those environments, let's say it may be, for example, you going to the bar and you going to the bar, let's be real, it ain't gonna lead to nothing good, right? You may be able to socialize I was with my fellas the other day, like we were watching a football game and they invited me out for some wings and to watch a football game. And that was cool. But I'm not making a lifestyle out of that. I'm not there like every single week, right? Like every on special occasions, that may be the case. So the advice that I'm sharing is not predicated on just cutting all these things out altogether. For certain things in your life, you may have to, because maybe you're getting over some vices that completely destroyed your life. Like, it's interesting because my church, we have these couples little fellowship, date nights that they do with couples. And there are certain couples that they went through very difficult seasons due to alcoholism. And they had asked everybody to not engage in drinking alcohol when going out because for some people, it may, lead them back into those vices, or they may be triggered in certain ways. And they just wanted to be respectful of those people that went through those challenges and are still overcoming them. Right. So again, there are certain aspects or certain environments that you have to cut off altogether because you don't have control over it yet. And then there's just some that you just have to set proper boundaries. Perhaps rather than being there every single week, maybe every couple of months you gather at these places. So analyze your environment. Sometimes that environment may be an environment that just always, every time you go, you just feel heavy. Any of you have environments like that? Maybe it's at work and you have to really separate yourself from perhaps some environment at work. I remember there was a captain. So when I was studying for to become a captain myself, I was working, underneath the captain, and I was sort of like an apprentice. And there was one captain that he would be in the galley, which is the kitchen on boats and ships, and he'd be in the galley at dead smack in the morning, 6 a.m., and just loud, obnoxious, talking like just very arrogant, borderline narcissist. And I didn't want to hear that, not at 6 a.m. in the morning. And I literally would go put some earplugs, and as loud as the engine room was, I would go in the engine room and just take a nap. And I just did not want to be in that environment. So I had to separate myself from that environment for my own peace. You understand? And there are again, some people, right? Because many times it's not the environment, it's the people in the environment. So it's sort of stacking on one another. Maybe the environment perhaps has drugs or alcohol, and you've been battling with that, and you have to separate yourself from that environment because you don't have the strength yet to be able to just say, you know what, I'm not doing that. Maybe the environment has a lot of single people, and that always leads you to trouble. And, you can't be in too many single environments. So analyze the environments and determine whether or not there are environments in your life that you just have to separate yourself from altogether. And you'll know based on whether or not that environment leads you to self-sabotage. Maybe certain environments, for example, it may not even be as dramatic as alcohol or drugs, or being around, a bunch of single people, right? It may be an environment that makes you spend more money. I'll say that again for those in the back. Like, some of you have been struggling with your finances. And the reason you're struggling with your finances is because you're lingering in the environment that's promoting the spending of that money. So, for example, if you're in an environment, like, I remember my mom, she used to work with these Dominicans in a hair salon. And I remember her mentioning how, these Dominicans, women, like, they love the high life, like they love nice things, and they love eating out, right? So they spend $30, $40 every single day just eating really good food. They're making good money. But my mom had just started in that hair salon, and she found herself spending the same amount of money, right, as these women, but they were doing far better. One was the owner, and others had built up their clientele. So again, some environments are promoting you spending more money than you should. And you have to analyze whether or not that you're ready for that environment, because you may not be able to pay to play at this season of your life. And you say, you know what? I need to separate myself from this environment for a season, get my money right before I can come back and play. So that's something that you also have to take into account, because some environments will sabotage you financially. And it's not always a negative thing with that environment, but it's promoting and perpetuating the spending of all of your money. Okay. The very last thing is separating yourself from distractions. 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 How many things in your life are currently distracting you? How many things? There's so many things that come to mind for me. And it's interesting because the other day I was I was in my car and I had these recorded CDs from a personal development audio that I used to listen to. And as I was listening to this audio, a lot of it was centered around just personal development stuff, limiting beliefs and all of that. And what I realized is over the years, I had gotten over a lot of the limiting beliefs and all taking action. Like what I realized was holding me back more than anything. It wasn't the belief in myself. It wasn't even my self-image. It wasn't any of that. It was distractions, just certain things grabbing my attention. And whenever you give your tea to other things or other people, that's less time, energy, and attention you can give to the things that you really need to be doing. So sometimes it's not reading more books. It's not getting more personal development. It's not working on your character per se. It's working on eliminating distractions. For those of you, for example, you want to work on your relationship with your children. Perhaps you just have too many distractions that are preventing you from giving the time necessary to nurture that relationship. You want to work on your most intimate relationships, your friendships. What do you have to give less time to so that you can give more time to the things that matter? Maybe some of you are probably spending way too much time on social media. Many of you hear me mention all the time about deleting my social media apps several times throughout the day because it starts to consume too much of my mental space. And I have to legit set boundaries for those things so that I can give more time to the things that ultimately matter. Okay. So separating yourself from distractions in 2023, what have been your greatest distractions? That's our self reflection question for this week. In 2023, what have been my greatest distractions? Has it been social media? Has it been TV? Has it been a specific person? Maybe it's a certain hobby, maybe it's a certain environment, and you're giving too much time to things that aren't really getting you to where you want to be in life. So the three things, again, to separate yourself from or really reflect on what you may have to separate yourself from are number one, people, number two, environments, number three, distractions. If you guys are getting value so far, drop a V in the comment thread. I just want to make sure that everybody's getting value here, that some of this information is helpful, it's useful. If it is, awesome. I see the V's coming in. Awesome, awesome. All right. So we're going to keep it going. I'm going to give you guys 8 tips for improving your relationships. Because again, when it comes to your season of separation, perhaps you just have to improve the relationships. It's not necessarily separating yourself from those relationships. Maybe it's healing some of those relationships, it's improving those relationships, and the improvement of those relationships will allow you to not have to separate it from it altogether. So do some inventory this week. Really analyze the relationships that are worth your time, the relationships that you want to take into the next season of your life. Anybody feel like 2024? I know sometimes you always hear, these cliche sayings, new year, new me, right? Like, oh, this year is my year, things like that. But I don't know about you, but I just genuinely feel that things are going to change for the better in 2024. At least for me personally. I'm not speaking for everybody, but anybody feel that way? Like things are just going to get better for your life in 20. You done been through some things. Maybe you're coming out of a really rough season and you're just like, God, I know that things are gonna turn for the better. I know that this pendulum is going to swing. I know that I'm coming out of a winter season. And if you coming out of a winter season, isn't that liberating to know that the worst is behind you and things are just going to go up from here? Guess what? The statement of this too shall pass is a real thing. There is this law of rhythm that permeates the cosmos, this law of rhythm states that like life is cyclical and you're not going to stay in that winter season that you're currently in, but you have to be proactive about changing your circumstances. This is the reason why we're referring to this season as a season of separation, because you're separating yourself from those things that were keeping you down, those things that were keeping you back, those things that were keeping you stagnant. So when it comes to just everything, right? So let's be real. Out of the three things that we covered to separate yourself from, environments and distractions, many of those environments and those distractions are filled with people. So it's the relationships. You have to improve your relationships. And to give you the root word for separation, right? The root word for separation, it's a Latin phrase. And let's see if I had it here. So the root word comes from the Latin word separare, and that means to pull apart. You have to pull apart certain aspects of your life that you have to separate yourself from. So the very first thing that we're going to cover when it comes to improving the relationships, because again, it may not be a matter of separation, it may just be a matter of improving, enhancing the relationship. So here are the 8 tips for improving relationships in your life. Number 1, listen actively and express yourself honestly. Many of you heard me mention last week, I think I mentioned how it's so ironic how the word listen also has the word silent in it. Listen is the word silent scrambled up. And that's so profound when you think about it, because you also hear me mention a lot that we have those 2 ears and the one mouth for a reason, to listen twice as much as you speak. And sometimes just the process of listening actively, what is that person ultimately expressing to you? And what are they saying? Like, don't think about what you're going to say next. Don't just get so wrapped up on how you feel about it. Genuinely listen and hear people out. And also expressing yourself honestly. So it's one thing to listen. It's a matter of communication. It's a two-way street. So yes, you're actively listening, but you're expressing how you genuinely feel about a situation, honestly. And it's interesting because I was watching this series called The Chosen. It's amazing. I would recommend it. And it's on the life of Christ and all of his miracles. And it was interesting because one of the issues that one of the characters had an issue with his wife, and one of the disciples, and he had this issue with his wife, and his wife had went through a miscarriage, and he was just going through it emotionally with her, but she didn't want to distract him. She didn't want to cause him any more suffering or anything like that, or just stop him from what he had going on. He had so much going on, and she didn't want to overwhelm him with all of this, but she didn't express it to him. And like he was even worse off because he didn't know what was going on, what was the issue. And the whole time she was suffering in silence and just not expressing herself honestly about what she was ultimately going through. And I feel like sometimes we struggle with that as people, not really saying how we truly feel. And you can't expect for people to be mind readers. You can't expect for people to just automatically even have it within them to ask, like, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Especially for us men. Men can be clueless sometimes. I'm not speaking on behalf of all men, but let's be real. Us brothers, sometimes we struggle with when it comes to just checking in on our feminine counterparts. Like, hey, is everything okay? How are you feeling? How was your day? So you want to express yourself honestly when it comes to your relationships. What relationships in your life right now, you probably haven't built a dynamic on truly expressing the way that you feel. And for men, that's one of the best pieces of advice I can give. We have to do a better job at communicating our emotions and how we feel about what it is that we're going through, because men tend to bottle these things up, and it's built up trauma. It's built up just these energy blocks you get in your body because you're building up all of this negative emotion, and you have no way to properly release it. You don't even have an ear to listen. So it's essential to always have people that you can talk to and express your emotions and process them. Number two, foster trust. Foster trust. And this is with your intimate relationships to just so many different things. And when it comes to trust, I feel like one of the prerequisites of trust is consistency, because anybody can trust somebody in a moment, right? Like maybe you can, maybe you can, maybe you have issues with trust, but typically what solidifies trust is consistency. You just know that this person is going to follow through. This person has been a person of their word for many years, and you build that trust. Trust is something that has to be earned. It is not just given to anyone. You have to earn someone's trust. And that comes from consistently following through on your word, on your actions. And if you want to rebuild trust, it can be a friendship, for example. Maybe you broke their trust by saying something about them behind their backs. And maybe you were gossiping to someone and the word got out and you broke all their trust. And perhaps the path to recovery is going to entail that apology, you understand, but also just consistently showing them that you can do better, right? People can be forgiving, and it is possible to rebuild the trust. Whatever you've gone through, some of you feel like you could never get that trust back, but trust me, no pun intended, you could very well build that trust over time. I believe time can heal. It truly can heal, but it's not enough to just go through the time. You have to show that you want to do better, that you are doing better. Okay, so foster trust. Number three, show appreciation. Show appreciation. Us men, appreciation is like oxygen for us, even for women. Let's be real. Ladies, how many of you have genuinely have gotten burnt out in a relationship, like just burnt out? Your emotional bank account has been way overdrawn simply because you haven't been feeling appreciated. You've been doing the most, and perhaps your work hasn't been acknowledged, or fellas, maybe you're working your ass off. Let's be real. Like you're just constantly working, grinding, doing what you have to do for your family, and you just don't feel that appreciation. Maybe your love language isn't being met. Maybe your love language is words of affirmation, and you haven't been having anyone speak highly of you or express their appreciation to you. And it's not that they don't necessarily appreciate you, they just don't know how to love you the way you want to be loved. So, when it comes to appreciation, if you want to be appreciated, you need to show your appreciation for all of the relationships. Let people know how much you appreciate them. Sometimes not through words, sometimes through gifts, because words may not be someone else's love language, but gifts are. And showing your appreciation with a small, as they say, a small token of appreciation, that can go a long way. Writing a letter. Writing a letter is probably the most underrated thing in the world of personal development. Like, if you really want to show your appreciation, show that you put some sweat equity into it. Anybody can just send a card, right? And put to and from. All right. But how many people have actually taken the time to write a physical letter? Most people in the back of their mind, they're like, people don't write letters anymore. The fact that this person took time to physically write down an appreciation letter, it means a lot. Many people even I keep all of my my letters, like any letters that have been written to me, I keep all of them. And it's not something that I just throw away. It has that sentimental value to it. So there's so many ways that you can show appreciation, from your words to your gifts to your actions. Sometimes, like for me, my love language is acts of service. So I feel appreciated if someone cooks for me, for example. Like I'm always super grateful, or they help me with something that I need help with around the house. Like that's how I feel appreciated. And just know that because you may feel appreciated like that, doesn't mean that other people will. So you have to really ask yourself, what is this person's love language? Typically, the way that you know is by the way they express their appreciation. So someone may be a big gift giver, and they're such a big gift giver because they also love receiving gifts. So that may very well be their love language. Maybe their love language is quality time, and they're amazing at giving people their quality time. But in order for them to feel loved and appreciated, they also have to receive that quality time from you. So see how other people love on other people. And that's typically how you can have a general idea of maybe how they want to be loved or appreciated. Okay. Number 4, we have be supportive. Be supportive. And sometimes, especially for us men tend to thrive when we feel like our partners are supporting us in our dreams and our endeavors. I have so many clients that I work with over the years that just genuinely don't feel supported. And for the brothers who are watching this, I just want to make this very clear. A woman can only take so much dreaming. If you're constantly out there talking up a good game about what you're going to do and you don't have integrity with your words, like your words and your actions aren't lining up, a woman can only take so much wishful thinking. You need to show some fruits for your labor. You're like, am I bugging here? Let me know if you ladies would agree with this, right? Like you love yourself, a man that can dream big, but at some point in time, like your brother's got to show up with some kind of hunt. He may talk a good game about how amazing of a hunter he is, right? But y'all out there starving because he just is not producing results. It's biologically embedded in your nature, right? To want to see the results, because sometimes it's a matter of survival. You may have a man that has big dreams, big goals, and big aspirations, and y'all riding the struggle bus for far too long, and it gets exhausting, right? So if you want your woman to believe in you, you need to produce. There's just no getting around this. And don't just expect to for your partner to just automatically believe in you. It's like, yeah, it may start out like this. They're like, man, this person is amazing. They're goal oriented. They talk about dreams and goals and visions, but they're not taking action. You have to show results. That's where trust comes from. It's from consistently producing results. That's how trust is built. So if you want to earn someone's admiration, if you want to earn someone's support, you need to show some results after a while, because people get tired. They get tired of just hearing all talk. People would rather watch the feet than watch the lips. I can show you better than I can tell you. That should be your mindset. Don't just keep talking up a good game. Produce results if you want to receive that person's support. Some of you like, well, I want to receive the support first. And then, well, if you want to receive the support, then that vision better be compelling enough and it better make some sense. Right. So sometimes in your relationships, like for men, one of the pieces of advice that I typically give is have a vision, have a plan, and share your plan with your partner, and let them know. Like when I go and I talk to my wife about my plan, I'm like, this is the plan. Does any part of this plan not make sense? Because I'm flexible. If you have something better, if you have an alternative that makes more sense, I'm okay with adapting my approach. But this is the plan. And perhaps you're not transparent about your plan. So there's a lot of uncertainty in that relationship because you're not transparent about your intentions, and maybe you don't have the best track record. So your partner doesn't have that trust. They don't have that trust, and therefore you don't have that support from them. So build that trust by either consistently producing results, or if you don't have the best track record, have a really good plan and let them know that you're going to follow through and actually follow through. Because if you don't, you're going to have even less trust. You're going to have even less support, and you're going to lose that person's respect. So that's what it's about. It's integrity. It's a matter of integrity more than anything. Number 5, quality time matters. So spend it together. Quality time matters. So spend it together. You have to remember that a lot of your relationship, ask yourself, how much time are you genuinely giving to that relationship? One of the things that was a big game changer for me for example, was because I was working so much, I was giving so much time to my work and I wasn't prioritizing my relationships. I wasn't blocking out my schedule in for just my relationships. So when it comes to spending quality time, it's not enough to just speak it into the ether. Like, I'm going to spend more quality. No, you need to block out time in your schedule for your people, for your children, for your significant other, for your friendships. Block out time in your schedule, because what happens is so many things are distracting you. So many things are pulling for your attention. Attention is the new currency. Everything is designed today in the world of business to grab your attention. Social media, media, everything like that, it wants eyeballs. Just like I want y'all attention here on the Breakfast Club. I want you to give me your attention, right? Just like every media outlet around the world and everything else that's distracting you. So, in order to truly give someone your quality time these days, you have to eliminate those distractions and the things that are going to grab your attention, your energy, your all of those things, your time, and specifically block out your schedule for your people. This will help so much. Like, when I made a decision that Sundays were going to be my family day, period. There's just no exception to that. Just like in Jewish tradition, the Shabbat is holy, the holy Sabbath. Every single week, they don't deviate, they don't pivot. It's law for them. And I believe that if you truly want to thrive in your relationships, it has to be law for you. You have to be a servant to your schedule. And if you schedule your relationships in, you're going to see a dramatic shift. You're going to give so much more time. Remember, it's not about always the time that you give, it's about the experiences you also create. So, for example, you may be able to only squeeze in your significant other for, let's just say, an hour, right? But if you do things with that hour, don't just do the same thing. Go out for ice cream, go out for a walk, go out to a museum, go out to an art gallery, go and watch a movie, go to a different restaurant, coffee shops, different environments. People don't necessarily remember time, they remember experiences. So, whenever you are, for example, with your children, find really cool things to do. My son's birthday came up and we basically just asked him, well, what do you want to do? Not just a typical, just cut a cake, right? The typical stuff that we want. We asked him, what did he want to do? And he was very clear. And again, for us, we're always looking to do things that are memorable, not only with one another in our family, but like our children, just doing things that are unique experiences. Because you don't have to give all of the time. There, especially for those of you who aspire to do something great in your life, understand that you will have to be obsessed about that very thing. You will have to dedicate a lot of time. There will have to be a lot of input that goes into that dream. And because there's so much time and energy and dedication to the input of that dream, it's typically going to take less time from your relationships, from your most intimate relationships. So if you don't schedule them in, or the little time that you have, if you don't make it memorable and worthwhile, like, be present for real. Don't just hang out because you said, "Oh, well, I scheduled it in. It's time for the spouse, right? It's time for the kids." And now you're on your timeline scrolling, right? While you're pushing your kid on the swing. Be there, fully present. Give them 100% of you, and you'll notice a drastic change in your relationships. And I'm not just talking about theory here. I'm not talking about something that I read in a book. I'm talking about someone who, like, this has been a big aspect of my personal life. This is how I've been able to manage running businesses, building communities, working with clients, and also being a family person, right? Like, just scheduling them in and making them memorable. It'll make the biggest change. Some of you feel like you don't have the time. Trust me, you do. Just make it memorable. And when you reflect back on your month, you're like, wow, we did this, we got to do that together, we got to do, and you're not thinking about the little bit of time, you're thinking about all of the different experiences that you've had. Okay. So next up, we have number 6. So number 6 is resolve conflicts calmly, understand each other's perspective. Again, resolve conflicts calmly. And this is so important because with your relationships, just know that your relationships are going to entail um, issues from time to time. I have a friend of mine who has a friend who's really close to them, and for the first time in their relationship, they had some issues. Like for months, they just weren't whatsoever. So it wasn't a relationship that had to be cut off. It's a relationship where you could grow from. Like maybe that challenge that you had in that relationship is an opportunity for you to grow your character, for you to grow just overall as a person. So when it comes to these relationships and those hard conversations, set your intention before you go into that conversation. This is why I always talk about the 5 to Thrive. I actually talked about it on TV like 2 weeks ago. And it's something that I preach all the time because it's about setting your intention. 5 questions. What do I want? Why do I want it? How do I want to feel? Who do I want to be? And how can I make this all a reality? That's the 5 to Thrive. And if you just ask yourself those 5 questions, I promise you, the relationship and the conversation overall, whatever issue that you're dealing with is going to go so much more smoothly. Because the moment you ask yourself, okay, what do I want? Going into the conversation, you may genuinely want to come to a conclusion. Like, what do I really want out of this issue that we're dealing with? I want to come up with some kind of resolution. I want to solve whatever it is that we have going on, or I just want to talk it out. Why? The reason why is because it's been causing you a lot of pain. It's been causing you a lot of suffering. The reason why is because you truly value this person and you love when you're on good terms. You love when you got any of you can relate to that. Like maybe you have a person in your life and your life is just so much better when you're in good terms with that person. Like things are just always better. As long as you're on good terms, things just naturally go better in your life. So why drag it out? If you know that things are always going to be good, then work it out. It's important. And you know you want this person in your life. The next is how do I want to feel? So how do I want to feel? The thing about the 5 to Thrive is it's also works on the flip side. So it's how I want to feel, but how I don't want to feel. Maybe you don't want to feel sad during the conversation. Maybe you don't want to feel angry during the conversation. Maybe you want to feel calm. Maybe you want to feel compassionate, empathetic, whatever it is. You want to feel a sense of love and understanding. And that's how you want to go into the conversation. Who do I want to be? Or who do I not want to be? So who you want to be, maybe you want to be that loving person that is not all angry and frustrated and yelling at them. That's not who you want to be. You want to be someone that's patient. You want to be someone that's loving, someone that's understanding. That's who you genuinely want to be. And last but not least is how can I make this all a reality? How can you set your intention and make all of those a reality? So perhaps when you set up the conversation, you do it in an environment where you don't have your arguments usually. So maybe if you usually have arguments in your bedroom, maybe having the conversation going for a stroll in the park might be best. Maybe it might be doing some breathing exercises before you go into it. Maybe wearing a certain outfit, whatever it is. Like my friend handled his issue with his friend at a bar. Maybe sometimes you just gotta hash it out, and going to a bar may be your thing. Maybe it's over a game of golf. Maybe it's while getting pampered, right? But do it in such a way where you're optimizing the results, right? Like you're getting the best results going into that conversation. So again, resolve conflicts calmly and understand each other's perspective. Maybe you go into it listening twice as much as you want to speak. Maybe you go into it, like for me these days, what I have to set my intention on is, hey, don't be judgmental because you cannot judge and influence at the same time. You're not going to influence this person while judging them at the same time. So go in there with an open heart, go in there empathetic, go in there non-judgmental altogether, and it's going to go a lot better for you. Next up, we have number 7, practice empathy and kindness in your interactions. Practice empathy and kindness in your interactions. So I know for me, one of the things that I always have to remind myself of is be kind. Be kind. There are people who are just very sensitive. And in your mind, you may say, well, be kind for what? Like this person is just sensitive. And I mean, if they're sensitive and you really want a certain outcome, being kind, you can never go wrong with being kind to people. Again, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you truly want to make an impact, if you want to make a difference in whatever it is that you're going through, be very intentional about just being kind. And sometimes I find myself in a space where I'm go, 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 go. I'm in business mode and I'm in savage mode, right? Like the warrior archetype is being tapped into. And I'm not in a space of just being kind. I'm like, we need to be efficient. And sometimes you'd be amazed, being kind can lead to being more efficient. You just being kind to people will be the very thing that has them feel more motivated. Sometimes people may not want to work with you because you're an asshole. Like, let's be real. You may really just be mean to people and they genuinely don't want to work under you, or they're very like not motivated. If you're a boss, if you're a manager, if you're a supervisor, for all of you on the Breakfast Club, understand this. People are not going to be as motivated to work underneath you if you're not kind. Be kind. Be really kind to people, like your children, your spouse. Like it can go a long way. Kindness can take you so far. Next up, we have number 8, prioritize personal development. Prioritize personal development. Why? What does personal development have to do with relationships? So when it comes to personal development, it's so important when it comes to the dynamic of relationships. I believe that part of the reason why like my situation has worked, my wife and I, for example, we've done a lot of personal development together. So personal development when it comes to relationships is important because you have to set the example. When it comes to leadership, leadership is about leading your ship. So you have to set the example for what you want to receive. And like, for example, you want people to be kind, loving to you, be supportive of you. You have to exude that. And you have to analyze even the relationships in your life where people are just taking. I have a friend of mine, and I don't want to say he's not my friend anymore, but like he was always just taking, taking, taking. And eventually I just like I was over it. I was like, there's no mutual exchange of value here. And you're always taking from me. You're not even like asking me about my family. You're not checking in on me, how I'm doing. It's always about you, what you have going on, and I'm gonna have to love you at a distance. And that's okay. Again, you have to analyze all of your relationships. And the thing about personal development is when you start to change yourself and you start to really, really work on your communication, on being more empathetic, on being more kind, you start to be more supportive of other people, talk good about people behind their backs. You'll start to notice that a lot of the people you attract in your life are also like that. You start to attract more higher vibrational people. And I always like when it comes to my own personal life, like I'll let people know that I'm doing life. But like, look, I'm not into the drama. Like I don't do drama. My house is a house of love and light. And if you come every time you come around me, just know it's gonna be positivity. And I know for some people they're like, oh, that's a bunch of BS, right? Like people are human or whatever. Like it's probably like that for you because you've never experienced that. You probably have not attract. There are people who legit live in peace every single day. I was talking to my wife the other day, and we were talking about how we don't really argue. Like we have since moving here over a year ago. Like we could probably count on one hand the amount of, and it weren't even like arguments, like yelling back and forth to each other. They were just like hard conversations. You understand? And maybe we just didn't like each other for a couple of hours or a day. And that's okay. Like, yes, we're human, but 99% of the time, it's love and it's light and it's peace and it's calm. It doesn't have to be angry all the time in your environment. It doesn't have to be frustration and And maybe you feel like, oh, well, it's because of this person in my house. It's because of my children. Listen, it's a two-way street. Every time you point that finger, think about the three pointing right back at you. Every single time. Think about how you can change as a person. Be the change in which you wish to see in the world, in the words of Gandhi. Don't just wish things were better. You have to get better as a person. You have to constantly work on yourself. It's this idea of kanai. Kanai is an acronym for constant and never ending improvement. In Japanese traditions, they refer to it as kaizen. Kaizen is just this way of life where you're always, always working on yourself. It's always about personal development. This is the path to self actualization, to transcendence. If you study basic human needs psychology and Abraham Maslow's work, you'll see how the pinnacle of life is self-actualization. But the only way to get there is by constantly working on you. And the gift of working on you is you having more of a capacity to give to the world, you being much more expansive with the way that you love people, the way you give back to people. And that's what it's about. So you have to do the internal work. It's always, again, constant and never ending improvement. Personal development is a lot like sailing off into a horizon. You sail off into a horizon, not necessarily to see a piece of land, the promised land at the horizon. Typically, what happens for those of you who've been out in the ocean is you sail off into the horizon just to see another. You sail off into the horizon just to see another. You cross that Atlantic Ocean, you are going to be sailing into many horizons. And with personal development, it's not an arrival to the promised land. It's constantly sailing off into this ideal of being the very best version of yourself, of being your highest self. And when you give that gift to the world, life just becomes so much more amazing. It truly does. And I would encourage you all that are really wanting some change in your life. And if you want change in your life going into the new year, just do a lot of reflection. And when I went to church, they spoke about going into those lonely places, right? Those places to just spend time in solitude and go into some deep introspection and really ask yourself, again, this year, what are some of the things that you genuinely feel you have to separate yourself from in order to get to the next level, right? You have to make a decision. And remember, decision, the word decide means to cut off, kill off any other alternative. You have to make a decision of what you're going to separate yourself from. You're going to have to make a decision from who you're going to have to love at a distance, who you're going to have to cultivate a limited association with, what environment you're going to have to remove yourself from, what distractions you're going to have to set boundaries for. And your issues may not necessarily be you learning anything. It may not be the how-tos. It may just be your ability to separate yourself from things that don't serve you. It's not necessarily getting new friends. It's not sometimes reading the book or going to that masterclass. Sometimes it's just genuinely eliminating things or expressing your no muscle. Many of you have been saying yes to everything. Your family member comes to you for help, it's yes. Your friend comes to you for help, yes. You don't have boundaries for yourself and you haven't exercised your no muscle. And sometimes your ability to say no is going to be far more important than your ability to say yes, because you're saying yes to too many things that aren't getting you to where you want to be. You have a lot more time than you think. Many of you who think you don't have any time, if you really, really calculated how much time goes into your work, how much time goes into the truly important things in your life, you'll end up discovering that you do have time. Even if it's an hour to dedicate yourself to checking in on those relationships, even if it's an hour taking the time for your personal development, even if it's just an hour with your significant other, with your children, with your best friends, it makes the biggest difference because it's not about the time, it's what you do with the time. It's not about the years in your life, it's the life in your years. So when it comes to just making this change, once you decide, what you're going to separate yourself from, what you're going to give less of your tea to, right? Less of your time, your energy, your attention. Then you have to determine, what are you going to give more of your tea to? What are you going to give more time, energy, and what deserves your time? What deserves your energy right now? Think about what is the highest use of your time. The greatest thing that you can do with your time. Every single moment throughout the day, reflect, is this the highest and greatest use of my time right now? When you're at work, is this the highest and greatest use of my time right now? When you're at home, is this the highest and greatest use of my time right now? What should I be doing? What can I do right now that my future self will thank me for? When was the last time you really reflected on that? What are you going to do today that your future self will thank you for? And when you start to go about your life in this way and you give time to the things that truly matter, things start to change. They start to change. Take my word for it. As we start to close out the year, and I'm excited for you because this Saturday, I'm going to unpack just a full blown out reset. And Life Mastery, for the very first time, is going to be free for everyone. It's never like, I always have some sort of a hybrid model with VIP and all that. It's going to be free for absolutely everyone. I'll be live streaming it on the Knowledge and Inspiration page. And I'll just share really quick. This is the flyer. You guys can take a screenshot of that flyer if you like, but I'm really excited to kick things off this Saturday. A reset. It'll be also Zoom, as well as, on the Knowledge and Inspiration page. I would definitely recommend jumping on the Zoom link, and you can engage with me throughout the entire time. It's going to be 4 hours of just resetting everything. The things that you need to separate yourself from, the things that you may need to add on to your life, maybe some habits that you have to change, but really just going through this process of resetting, because I know all of us are long overdue for a reset, right? If anybody is long overdue for a reset, drop an R in the comment thread. If you just feel like, you know what, like, I think some things have been going good, but I'm ready for a reset going into the new year. I'm tired of just riding the struggle bus. I want to make some improvements. I want to change my health. I want to change my family situations, my relationships, my environments, my success. I want to improve my financial situation. And we're going to go deep into all of that. So many of you who've attended my Life Masteries over the years, you know the value that it comes with. It's truly dynamic. We're going to go a lot deeper than we usually do here on the Breakfast Club. But all in all, as we're in this season of separation, as we're going through this eviction process from who we have to raise the rent on, to who we allow occupying our mental space rent free, to who has to get evicted because they've been squatting for far too long and they're not adding value, take some time to reflect on it this week. And on Saturday, come with what you've thought about, right? Bring it to the table and say, you know what? I need to enhance this. I need to give more consciousness to these areas of my life. And I got to start the process, because it's not enough to just think about it. You have to put those thoughts into actions. It's to the longest distance in your life that sometimes you'll have to make. Some people say from the head to the heart, but I believe it's from the head to the heart to the hands. That is the longest journey you'll have to make in this lifetime, from the head to the heart to the hands. You have to make sure that your mind, your heart, and your actions are all in alignment if you truly want to take things to the next level, if you truly want to live a dynamic life. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. Breakfast is officially served. If you got value from this, drop a comment. I read through all of them. And if there's any way that you can thank me, the ultimate way would be subscribing to all of the podcasts, the YouTube channel, all of that stuff. I also have a subscription on Instagram, right? And that's another way that you can always support. And I offer complimentary coaching sessions from time to time for all of our subscribers. But thank you so much. God bless every last one of you. And I look forward to continuing on this season of separation. And it's a good separation. It's not this negative connotation when we think of separation like divorce. It's really divorcing yourself from things that no longer serve you and opening up space for what's next in your life, the next chapter, the next evolution, the new you, the 2024 version of you. And I'm excited to support you every step of the way. So I'll be seeing you guys this Saturday. I'll be posting up all of the information for you all. you'll get all of the information on this week's event. So stay tuned. If you're not in the Knowledge and Inspiration page, send me a DM. I'll be more than happy to add you on there. That way you can tune in from there if you'd like, or just hop over to the Zoom. God bless every last one of you. Stay tuned for the podcast that's just dropped today. It's going to be an amazing podcast for many of you. So you're going to love it. And I'll be seeing you in a couple of days. Take care. God bless. Breakfast is officially served. Thanks again for tuning into this episode. It would mean the world to me if you can follow, subscribe, share, or even leave a review. I look forward to putting out more content, and we'll see you on another episode.